Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram Om. 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 Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Hari Om to everybody. Hari Om, Hari Om. Namaskaram. For the past 2 days, Papa has been trying to make us know that spirituality is not to be divided. It has got very much with the creation, very much with the workaday life. He did not choose to remain in Kadri Hill and then intensely carry on with the disciplines and then finally scale the heights. Instead, God prompted him to leave everything and then to embrace the whole creation, accepting all situations. Normally we term it as worldly, all situations as happening by His will, and it is for our ultimate good. For that, He makes us to pass through the severest form of tests. It is not an easy cakewalk. So when you and I deal with men and matters, in our family life, professional life, and social life, we understand now that the God factor or the God element or God dimension should be maintained, not to be disconnected, not to be limited to a puja room activity or when we go to a temple or when we go to an ashram. Visit to the puja room, visit to the temple, visit to the ashram, spiritual institutions, enable us to know that He is there everywhere and He is behind everything. This is the strong message that is given to us through In Quest of God. This is very, very important. Normally, traditionally, even from our childhood, we have, suppose we have that culture of going to puja room. Suppose we have a puja room where we have the photos of Krishna Devadas or gurus. And then immediately after our bath, before we go outside, we go there and do some prayer, some chandan or vibhuti or kumkum we apply, and then we carry on with our activities. But while carrying on our activities, whether we are a student or whether we are working, or whether we are in the household activities, we hardly remember the God factor. That is how we have been brought up. There is a mental divide between the so-called labeled spiritual life and so-called labeled worldly life. So here God has been extremely kind to make use of Vittal Rao's situation, which was caused by him, to be one with the creation under varying situations. Not there he is always in the midst of his admirers, his devotees. Not that he is there only in the known circle. In our language, everybody was a stranger. To him, everybody was a form of God. This is the difference, To us, he is a stranger because we don't bring in the God factor. In his case, he did not feel, because he specifically said, in the article, preamble given in the vision of God, he emphatically makes this clear. Oh, second. Can you bring the second one, which is there?
Second, in the vision of
in the shelf. No, this you don't have it there. So he clearly mentioned that he does not see anybody else. There was only, he experienced that he was living and moving in a new world in which he felt there was none other than himself and his great master Ram. He's all in all. There was no stranger, there was no adverse situation. Because to him, everything was a form of God. By that, he slowly makes us to think, because we cannot conceive of that state. Because so far, all these years, we have made a clear demarcation. We have demarcated, this is spiritual, this is worldly. And to break that boundary and to become see with a different perspective, that is the struggle all of us are having. We have faith, but that faith is limited to a particular form in a particular place. But whereas when we go through in quest of God, we find that He places Himself, or God places Him in different situations. Some are the so-called labeled positive, some are the so-called labeled negative. We call it as adverse, but to Him nothing was adverse, everything was ordained. This particular point we have to keep on hammering. Right from the moment we get up in the morning till we retire to bed, He is very much there in the form of His creation. And when I close my eyes and try to reseed myself from the rest of the creation, I try to identify Him as the life force, as the consciousness, as the intelligence. And the moment I open, I see Him in different forms. At least mentally we will try now. No? Mentally, intellectually we will try. So that as time goes on, of course, depending upon the intensity He gives us to move towards Him, we will be able to capture something of what He has captured. He says, as a child of God, he is freely moving about under His guidance and protection. He meets His beloved everywhere. You are all forms of His beloved. Why should he then feel himself a stranger anywhere? He is one with you. He is your eternal companion in the spirit. This is something, a dimension which probably we have not had while going through In Quest of God. So when we now open from chapter number 1 to up to chapter number 37, every chapter keeps on reminding, repeated strokes. That is why at no place he was perturbed, at no place he was demotivated, at no place he was feeling frustrated. Everywhere. Otherwise, everything is okay. We all hear all these things in a comfortable background, and then at that time we are intellectually convinced about it. But when it comes to our practical life, we are unable to. So we must revisit with this background to In Quest of God. We will be able, a little bit of research, suppose we do from chapter 2 or 3, we will find that all these things have been beautifully brought out by Ram in a manner in which it gets stamped in our heart. Which chapter was that platform where he felt the urine smell?
Right foot.
He says, just imagine. While he was resting in the station along with some other sadhus, who also had arrived by the same train, the railway police objected and asked all of them to go out. He sought a place under a tree in front of the station, within the compound. But here again the policeman interfered and drove him away. Knocking about for some time, he saw at last a spot under another tree in a far-off corner of the railway compound. As he had nothing to spread on the floor, he lay himself down on the bare ground. When his nose came in close proximity with the ground, he felt the strong smell of urine. Now, this is the happening. Immediately, he says, "O Ram, how kind of you. You make your humble slave pass through every kind of experience, all for his good." This condition taught him further. What a folly it was to make much of this perishable body. And it also tended greatly to make him find his true level, which is indeed very, very low. To afford him the benefit of this experience, O Ram, thou alone appeared as a policeman and brought about this circumstance. Here Ramdas, the child of Ram, slept soundly till morning in the loving embrace of that all-powerful being Ram. An incident where we have no chance of bringing God dimension, no? We may be condemning, we may be finding fault with the policeman. And the moment we hear we smell these, we try to go away from that. But here, everything is taken as positive, and he brings the God dimension there. And the words here, this condition taught him further still what a folly it was to make much of this perishable body. When we ourselves pass urine, which comes from our own body, we find, an aversion towards it. Forget about somebody's urine. Our own urine and our own, whatever our body rejects or ejects, we are not friendly with that. We are not comfortable with that. So the Ram is gently making us aware of the transient nature, not only the transient. Normally we bring it under the category of deplorable, no? We are not at all comfortable. But at the same time, we should know it comes from our own body. That's what he says. This condition taught him further still what a folly it was to make much of this perishable body. It is subject to decay and death. It is subject to disease. It is subject to all this. Urine is there, stool is there, phlegm is there, sweat is there, which we carry. For a moment at least we should be reminded, We may forget. The moment we leave this or leave this topic, we may forget. But at least for this moment, if this was not brought about, how will I know? This is from the practical field experience, It is not a theory. It is not a brain-breaking philosophy. It is a simple truth, through which, how. In Srimad Bhagavad Gita, often we go through again and again and again. Mamupetya punarjanmam dukkhalayam ashashvatam. Where Lord Krishna says, this birth, it is dukkhalayam ashashvatam. But Swami Ranganathanji, while giving his commentary, he says, this we will realize only after 60 or 70 years. Even before that, if we are told, our mind is not in a position to digest it, to dwell on it, to assimilate it. But now we try to go through. Just now a friend came to our room and said, I have seen this in my life. Initially we thought, we should have a good body, then we should have education, we should have a career, we should have a settled life, then we should bring up our children. So what, so what, so what, so what? In this preoccupation, we have never attempted to go deep within the indwelling spirit. This is ashashvatam, the joy or thrill we had of fulfilling all our sankalpas. It stays only for a few moments. The joy is gone, the charm is gone. And finally it brings miseries. Whether it is from the body or from the relations, or from any attachment we have with people or objects. It brings only misery, misery, misery. That we will all realize only when we are relatively free from the common run of life, and then, what did I gain? So he says, those who have applied their mind deeply on this, they realize that this life is only ashashvatam. Dukkhalayam ashashvatam. Previously we were thinking that, it doesn't mean that we have to neglect our body or ignore our body. There is another version also. The body is a temple where he resides. So we take care of it. We keep it clean. We keep the body clean. We can keep the body clean 100% only when the mind is also clean. So our whole life should be to clean this, to make it clean. Every day morning we clean our room, we clean our surroundings, our approach to the house, and everything we make it pakka. Then only we are comfortable. Otherwise we feel something is missing, something is missing. Everything is put in an orderly way, we find happy. So similarly, we are to treat this body also as a temple. At the same time, we should know this is after all a structure. A structure is subject to decay, disease. Yesterday we were sitting in the room, early morning when everybody came there for silent chanting. They saw so many worms are there, insects are. It was cleaned. Then some worker came and he elaborately, he saw one dead carcass of a, what do you call that term? A bandicoot, yes, correct. Bandicoot. On the ceiling, and that was all cleaned. Evening at the time of 3:30, when we went there, again the same thing. Then we found that could be the white ants. Again it was cleaned. So it happens, It is subject to disorder. But we try to keep the room clean, knowing fully well that it is subject to this. So we need not attach too much importance. That is how slowly the detachment takes place. It might not. But at least our preoccupation with the body, the mind space is occupied by the body plus the creature comforts and the comfort zone. So there will be some at least change in our attitude. So Papa here, through this, is bringing out a series of thoughts, depicting the reality. It is not a theory, no. It is not an intellectual exercise. It is a truth. He says, as he had nothing to spread on the floor, he lay himself down on the bare ground. When his nose came in close proximity with the ground, he felt the strong smell of urine. O Ram, how kind you are. You make your humble slave pass through every kind of experience, all for his good. This condition taught him further still what a folly it was to make much of this perishable body. That word much, not that we should neglect, but it was not to make much of this perishable body. And it also tended greatly. Any spiritual aspirant will always feel that he has still miles to go, miles to go, miles to go. Others may feel he has become evolved. He is an evolved soul. He has scaled the heights. But a real spiritual aspirant, even though he has passed many hurdles and he was blessed with so many blissful experiences, still he feels. That's why he says, it also tended greatly to make him find his true level, which is indeed very, very low. To afford him the benefit of this experience, O Ram, the alone appeared as the policeman and brought about these circumstances. Here Ramdas, the child of Ram, slept soundly till morning in the loving embrace of that all-powerful being, Ram. So now when we again go through the chapters, probably more and more clarity will come. That there is no divide between spiritual and worldly. He is very much available everywhere. So when we attend the Satsang, when we don't attend the Satsang, when we are in ashram, when we are not in ashram, when we are discharging our so-called responsibilities or meeting with so-called challenges, or trying to honor the commitments, if this is there sufficiently in our subconscious mind, to a very great extent we will be able to feel the cushioning, Yesterday, you remember, when we were reading, he also made a mention, when he was talking about meditation, that though he was transported to a different realm, still in the subconscious level, he was aware of what is going on. Gross level, no. Subconscious level, yes. So similarly, though at the gross level, we may not be able to bring in the God dimension. At the subtle level, suppose we are blessed with bringing this dimension, it stays with us, and whenever there is any aberration, any dilution, any slip, we are immediately pulled back. We will again go through some of the words of that Lance. While he was seeing the divine self as pervading every particle of the universe, he experienced simultaneously that same infinite as a personal God, his beloved Ram, speaking to him, guiding him in an utterly personal way. Thus we have in this book, as was mentioned in the foreword to the volume, a most extraordinary play of non-dualism and devotion, jnana and bhakti. Advaita and bhakti, documented in the most intimate and authentic manner. We have read, previously, but again, it will be worth. When conversing or even lecturing on no matter what subject, he would from time to time suddenly break in with the remark, Rams will be done. He would then return to the topic at hand calmly as if he had made no digression. An odd habit, one might say, but the reasons behind this habit far exceed mere conventional piety. To the discerning eye, they reveal instead a level of spiritual experience that is astonishing. Why such interjunctions? They came not out of habit at all, but out of a profound mystical vision. For, as this volume will testify, Papa Ramdas enjoyed an extraordinarily intimate relationship with God, whom, like many Hindus, he addressed as Ram. Even, Papa says, even when Ramdas is speaking to devotees, Ram butts in and whispers into Ramdas's ear, "Have you told them my will be done?" It appears that Ramdas was on such familiar terms with the divine that Ram himself was in the habit of pestering him. Ramdas once had to tell him, Papa continued, that it was not good manners to interrupt conversation. This reveals, we can be absolutely frank with him. We don't have to observe any protocol, any formality, any. Anything normally when we observe, when a dignitary or a celebrate comes to our house, when a Mahatma comes to our house, we will be very careful, no? Here he says absolutely no. You can be as frank with him as you are with yourself. So he says, Ramdas once had to tell him that it was not good manners to interrupt conversation. But Ram had, of course, the last word. Even though it was not the topic of the lecture, the devotees had nevertheless to be reminded, Ram's will be done. Initially, when we were reading, we thought about the mystical vision. But later on, when we apply our mind more and more on this word, it is the truth he says, Ram's will be done, not your will. Every time by getting it repeated, by making us to repeat, he stamps on our mind, that he is expressing through you. You cannot express anything by yourself. He is expressing it, everything through you. So his will alone prevails. Ramdas regularly had visions of God in a personal, playful form. Ram, in fact, was his constant companion, exercising with his devotees the profound but mischievous liberties that the Hindu tradition allows the divine. Not only did Ram disturb lectures and conversations, he sometimes shook Ramdas out of sleep. Papa took this and the other interruption with lively sense of humor. That means even while he is asleep, he gets up. Ram's will be done. Ram's will be done. Ram's will alone be done. His will alone prevails. Like that. Laughing at the astounding image he was conjuring up, Papa told his followers, Ram took the biggest piece of sugar candy, stuffed it into Ram's mouth before he could realize what was coming. As Ram was busy chewing the chunk of sugar candy into small bits and swallowing the lot, Ramdas went back to sleep. This was why Ramdas kept a small bottle of sugar candy near his chair, on a lighter vein. It was his way of keeping God from pestering him. We are struck at first by the playfulness of this anecdote. The light-hearted spirit it brings to so momentous a topic as the divine-human relationship. This speaks volumes about the difference between approach to God in Hinduism and the regions of the West. We also note an extraordinary intimacy and a profound mystical vision. Unless we seek out such stories about saints of Ramdas's caliber, could we ever imagine such a vivid and personal relationship with the infinite. This story epitomizes the pinnacle of the Hindu devotional tradition. In India, it is called bhakti, a highly developed spirituality of surrender to and intimacy with the divine. But there is more. When Ramdas scolded his beloved Ram for interrupting a lecture, thus displaying bad manners in a public setting, Ram retorted, "Who are all these forms sitting before you but mine?" This perception of all human beings, indeed of all creation, as identical in their true nature with the divine, was in fact the essential part of Ramdas's experience and teaching. Hindu Vedanta theology formulates this vision as non-dualism, but the path has traditionally sensed a conflict between bhakti devotionalism and Vedantic non-dualism. A loving relationship with God as sacred, otherwise brought to preclude the experience of identity with the infinite. How could the humble devotee say with the sages of the Upanishads, "I am God"? Is not the devotional relationship dependent on difference between the devotee and the Lord? One of the most striking aspects of Ramdas's spiritual experience and teaching is that they transcend this opposition. Ramdas's religion is of surrender to a personal deity of loving grace and the simultaneous realization of non-duality, the oneness of all with the ultimate. I am God, but at the same time I am a river flowing towards God. Think about it. When he was interrupted by this playful Ram and his insistent message of surrender to divine grace, Papa reached for his jar of sugar candies. Into whose mouth did he thrust? His own. Ram appeared playfully to his devotee, to be sure, but for Ramdas, he was not primarily the incarnation of Hindu lore, Lord Rama, the ideal ruler of Ayodhya. He was rather the infinite being, consciousness, bliss, Satchit Ananda. He was Brahman, the absolute. And with that absolute, like Shankara and Ramana Maharshi before him, Ramdas experienced a total inner identity. This volume continues the rare spiritual saga that began in Swami Ramdas's earlier work, In Quest of God, also published by Blue Dove. In it, the reader will encounter the ideas of loving devotion and non-dual realization, profoundly juxtaposed in the living experience of a remarkably gifted mystic. In addition, interwoven throughout will be the theme of the unfailing power of the divine name. For Ramdas did not win his way to realization through the willed introversion of classical yoga. He never posed as a master of meditation, controlled breathing pranayama, or the like. The profoundly thrilling mystical state described in this book, particularly in the first few pages, came not through mastery of meditation, but through the grace of God and a life grasped and vibrating to its last atom with the holy name of Ram. In the vision of God takes us through Ramdas's life from his vision in the Panchapandava caves of Mangalore to his settling in Anandashram in Kanhangad, Kerala. Living in the ashram or spiritual community, he received disciples, wrote and spread his influence of light to India and the world until his passing in 1963. He continued his travels for some years, especially to Bombay and Gujarat state, where he had many loyal disciples. He also made a journey to Europe, North America, and other parts of Asia. During this period, perhaps most importantly, he trained his foremost disciple, Mother Krishna Bai, who became a realized teacher in her own right and carried on her master's work. Since Mother Krishna Bai's passing in 1989, Swami Satchidananda, also a senior disciple of Ramdas, has been ably representing Papa's legacy and managing the ashram. It's a matter of great regret for me personally that I never had the opportunity to meet beloved Papa. Fortunately, I have had the joy of visiting Anandashram. And it is an experience that I can recommend to any sincere seeker who is able. At that time, the late 80s, Mother Krishnabai was still physically present as a living embodiment of her Guru's loving grace. To meet her was for me an experience of rare and precious beauty. Though old in years and frail in body, she still had an extraordinary power to lift others to new levels of awareness. On one had the feeling that having met her, one would never be the same and one would never be the same. Anandashram has earned a reputation as one of the most pleasant centers to visit in India. The accommodations are comfortable by Indian standard. Food is excellent, pure, nourishing, not too spicy, and prepared with loving care. One is welcomed as an embodiment of Ram himself, treated accordingly, for that was how Papa saw each person, and he taught his disciples to do the same. Most wonderful of all, however, is the constant humming of the sacred mantra, Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram, as it is lovingly and constantly chanted by the devotee. Everywhere one goes, in the temple, in the kitchen, in the halls, in the rooms, one is constantly surrounded with this holy sound. It resonates in your mind throughout the day. There is no need to exert yourself to repeat it, for it is in the air all around you. At night it reverberates through your dreams. In the morning it lifts you from your slumber. When you leave reluctantly, you carry it with you. This is no mere mechanical repetition. The chanting of the Rama Mantra carries itself in this holy place, for it is, I know of no other way to explain, energized by the continued spiritual presence of Ramdas himself. I remember the joy of discovering Ramdas through his writings. He became for me both preceptor and intimate friend. I am especially happy for new readers of Papa's words, for the discoveries that are about to unfold for them are precious beyond measure. This book, together with In Quest of God, comprises an invaluable account of the spiritual life of one of the greatest modern mystics of India. The fact that it is autobiographical adds immeasurably to its value, for rarely has the story of an authentic Hindu saint been articulated from such an intimate perspective. Ram's trilogy, In Quest of God, In the Vision of God, volumes 1 and 2, is destined to be a lasting classic of world spirituality. Readers will become privileged auditors as Ramdas tells his story. They will enjoy a spiritual feast that has few parallels. So every now and then, suppose we go through that, we really become aware of what all he has provided. We may be serious in our sadhana, but at the same time, we may be overlooking many of the things that are before us, that have been provided to us. With that perspective, we take up this In Quest of God. That is why he prompted us to name it as an in-depth study, not the superficial, book level, intellectual exercise. No. It is an in-depth study. And as we keep on going, we have found now, he connects up with many of his wisdom teachings through other books also, so that we get more and more clarity while we go through the In Quest of God. So when we were coming, what are we to share? Suddenly, this is the one which came to us. It is directly connected with our workaday life. Very much with workaday life. Something almost like what we are every day experiencing. In ashram, we may not feel much because the individual challenges are very, very few. It may be there, but very few compared to when we go out of the compound. So here he places himself outside the compound. So now he makes us to think, if God can make Ramdas such a powerful, we are also gods. Why should he not make us? We are entitled, you know. We are entitled. We have every right to ask him. But he says, you know, unless, Mataji specifically mentioned in one of her satsang, that unless the sense of individuality asks, craves, pleads, appeals, he will not come out. In Papa's case, he subjected him to go through successive failures by which he got the channel, you know. He cried, you know, first chapter says, where is rest, where is relief, where is rest? This was the heart's cry of Ramdas. So similarly, all of us have, but we have not cried. Probably he has been kind enough not to give us such trying moments. He has to be a little more harsh, then only probably we will turn towards him.
Swamiji, his insurance is there with us.
Pardon?
His grace, his insurance is there with us.
His grace insurance is there with us.
Grace insurance is there, no doubt. Insurance is there. Day for yesterday he said that, no. First of all, we should know we are all the qualified ones, eligible ones, because we are his. Swami Vivekananda quoted from Upanishads, Sundvandu Vishwe Amritasya Putraha. We are all heirs of immortal bliss. Why did he mention? So that we have forgotten, you know, we are the cursed lot. We will not be able to get out of it. We condemn ourselves. He says, no, don't condemn. You would not have been so far blessed with this line of approach. But when he causes something, you get the maximum advantage of it. You and I are eligible. You and I are the heir, H-E-I-R, heirs of immortal bliss. And we find, he has also shown in a miniature form, he started with a stressful life, ended with a serene life. No? That is also there. If that is what we are looking for, that is also there. Later on we come to know, it is not that the serenity he got because he went through all these 35 he already has had before he had started this yatra. His linking with God, his subservience to God is total, right from the beginning. Suddenly we realize, oh, that is why he was able to take everything in the right spirit. So this aspect is also there. If we want, oh, it starts with what? Ends with what? Oh, that also he has provided. Starts with a stressful life, ends with a serene life. So this serenity has been with him throughout. But when he is back again to the Kadri hills, free from his yatra, that means to some extent all these varied experiences will not be there unless people go to him in the cave and talk to him. Just like we sit in the ashram and people come here, you know, and they share their thoughts, they share their woes. Be here. We are not a subject in that. But the moment we go out of the compound, we are the very subject. And we are confronted with different types of experiences, where every moment we will lose the balance. So all these dimensions should come back again and again and again. That is why probably he has made us to take up this in-depth study. Anybody would like to share anything? All are in the upper story.
Pranam Swamiji. Swamiji, Pranam Swamiji.
Pranam.
Reading, here, listening to all this every day, we understand that for every difficult situation also, or hard life, or whatever is impossible for us to do anything. Papa must have been initially simple also, but going through all these hard life difficulties and trials, he turned into some noble, or what do you say, realized soul. So it gives us, what can I say, some inspiration that even if we have difficulties or trials in our life, Papa will give us strength to surpass all this, and we also will become pure souls, right? So listening to this, it gives us a lot of inspiration for us that how to become Papa's true disciples or devotees. Because otherwise, for us, any difficult situation or problems or trials and situations, we feel scared and we don't know how to tackle it and how to face all this. But listening to all this, like how Papa slept well, it was already urinated, or he went without food for so many days, or he was walking without chappals, no clothes on his body, walking up the mountain. So many stones must have pricked his feet. But so, on listening to this every day, we here in our homes, we understand that any trials or difficult situations come, they are there to purify us and improve in better people, better person.
So we need his remembrance,
Yes.
through grace.
Otherwise, we feel that why is our life so hard?
Correct.
That question comes when we are very young. But after listening to this every day, this 1 year, then we understand that these trials and tribulations and all difficult situations are there for polishing us.
Correct.
And for our own spiritual progress.
It's quite right. Puja Swamiji used to say in one of his letters, rubbing and scrubbing is necessary for cleansing, no? And rubbing and scrubbing is painful. So in one of the letters when he dictated, it was a striking one. You will find that in Mundane to Spiritual somewhere. Rubbing and scrubbing. Rubbing and scrubbing.
We also have read that book, and we also have read Papa's books.
Correct.
But this discussion and going into deep understanding, I'm sure everybody is benefited by this.
So probably that was...
We are blessed. Yes, we are blessed. Yes.
Pranams.
I want to share one and also ask my doubt. When a same test is repeatedly occurring, is it to show that we have...
When?
Padmaji.
When a same test is occurring repeatedly, it is to show where we reach, where we are. Is that right?
When the
Same test is repeatedly.
When it is repeatedly
tested, same thing. So that means is
it to show that where we stand,
or we improved our same state?
Normally,
what is happening to us?
Normally we paste this label test. Actually, don't you think that every moment we are under test? So initially we say test for something, then we find everything. Today morning one party was to leave to Mangalore airport. Suddenly, they got the information that the flight was cancelled, And then the alternate arrangements were made. But I found when they came and told, they were not upset. Something. So they were able to take everything, It is also a test. It is an ordinary happening. It can happen at any time due to various reasons beyond the control of the organization. Such changes can come. That is why Papa used to always say, when he was asked, if everything happens only by his will, he has given us a sense of individuality to plan, to do everything. For example, if we are prompted to come to ashram, we have to do the reservation well in advance, book. Papa immediately said, yes, you do that. Everything you do, put a comma and add, subject to his will. So that means this will, his will. With the more today morning, we could see that elderly people, elderly devotee was there. But they said, morning information came. So they were supposed to leave by 7 or something like that. And then later on, they leisurely got the other ticket and then left. So it was a reminder to us. It was a test. If we take it as a test, we will know, oh, God has been extremely kind to give that cushioning to us. Otherwise, we would be upset. Suppose we had planned so many things, somebody to meet us at the airport, especially ladies, so many things, and we couldn't get them on the phone is not working, something. They may get panicky, they may get upset, but here nothing. Everything went up. So whatever happening that is taking place, that can be named as test. Not necessarily, but a few has been named as test, so that we will be able to this test factor. Because to know that everything happens only by his will. You go to the market to buy something, what you want is not there, or what you want seems to be costly for you. You become upset when something happens there. But now you will not become upset. With this background, when we go, you will know, probably it's a test. Upside down. Yesterday we read that, story. That old lady was dragging her cart. Immediately, insurance came from that only. All the glass potteries, everything fell down. They got broken, and she did not know what to do. And her husband immediately said, you will have to pray for all these things. They were struggling hard to make both ends meet and to pay for this, But suddenly somebody comes and says, you please get up. You attend to your wound. You give me your details. Then he said, I have to pay. You don't worry. It has already been insured.
Swamiji, whether intuition is considered to be the voice of God?
Intuition?
To be considered to be voice of God.
Definitely. Intuition comes only from him. But to know whether it comes from him or from our own mind, the measuring rod is whether it is free from any vested interest in any form. Suddenly, for no reason, the inner voice will be there. Intuitively, we will be asked to do, we will know, we will be commanded to take.
If so, that will be the blessing in disguise?
Blessing, no doubt about it. Even for a person like Papa who has scaled the heights, he gets this, to go in for water fast, to go in for silence. And he says, when it will be over, Ramdas does not know. Again, another intuitive prompting should come for him to stop. So that also shows As Lancy, that Santiago professor writes, these are all something for us to learn. Why did he put everything in the form of a narrative? If we treat it only as his own experience, we are not the beneficiaries. But when we try to weave in with our own life and then see for us how to what action we can implement, that urine incident, something very, very touching, very touching.
Lesson for us.
Yeah. We are carrying our own urine, and when the moment it comes out, we'll develop an aversion, which fact we don't know. Right from childhood, as soon as we pass urine also, we wash our hands. When we go to the toilet also, we wash everything as if, something bad has taken place. We have to wash, no doubt. But the attitude will be different now. That is the nature of the body to eject what is not wanted by the body. And if it is not ejected, it will cause so many other problems for the body. And so to preserve its own, by its own, not that we are motivating, we are propelling it. No, it comes by itself, and it's a great blessing. If we don't, suppose if we don't pass urine for 24 hours, finished. Everybody is upset. We go to the doctor and ask. If we don't pass stools for 2 or 3 days, now only we realize that. So this is the nature of the body to eject what is not required then and there, and what is ejected by it, we have to take it as a part of the nature. Not that we have to put it in our lap. It has got its own place, but we will develop a positive attitude towards it. This is what Papa says from that. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. Every day something he gives more. Yes. Yes, tell me.
After listening to you and going through this in-depth study of IQT, you are understanding a story or epic like Ramayana, especially like differently.
Correct. Every day he is giving us new prompting to delve deeper. This same book, In the Vision of God, just imagine when the foreign edition was mooted by some of the devotees there, when they came to India and met Puja Swamiji in early 90s. When he presented, they were from Blue Dove Press. Immediately, ashram does not ask for any copyright or royalty or anything like that. So Swamiji said, okay, you can do it. Ensure that nothing is added or deleted, that's all. The only thing that you have to ensure. Then they said, yes. And they sent a copy. So In the Vision of God, copy is with us. And luckily, after so many arranging and rearranging and arranging and rearranging and shifting it from place to place, somehow these two books, the first and second, it has come back ultimately to our room. It has been there. But now, many a time we have gone through. But now, when we took up this inward journey on In Quest of God, 5 or 6 days back, again he prompts, go to that book. And the book is made available. What is printed in 1990 in US, one copy of which is available, and luckily, normally any book that comes in Ramana building, it doesn't stay there for long. But this book, somehow Papa made it possible for us to keep it. And then 3-4 days back, he makes us to go through it. It was as if, we are reading it for the first time. And then we find gems, relating to In Quest of God. So what other proof we need that we are guided by Him, we are facilitated everything by Him, we are provided everything by Him. All that he wants is only our attentive approach towards it. So we pray to him. We pray to him to bless us with that. Hari Om. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om.